Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy Friday. What a day. And it started on the weirdest possible note. If you tuned into the Today Show this morning looking for the usual funny cat videos and trans-friendly salad recipes, you may have been surprised to find actual news being committed on your screen. In place of the segment you expected to see, fit and sexy over 70, there was NBC News correspondent Miguel Almaguer letting you know that actually that assault on Paul Pelosi in San Francisco that you read about last week, that story was a whole lot stranger than you ever imagined. According to Almaguer, citing several law enforcement sources with direct knowledge, it was Paul Pelosi who opened the door for police when they arrived. Now, you'll remember that authorities had previously told us that the intruder, David DePape, had broken into Paul Pelosi's bedroom on the third floor of the house and woken him up. Yet somehow both Pelosi and DePape were on the ground floor by the time police got there. Moreover, according to Almaguer, Pelosi and DePape had been together in the house for at least half an hour. And yet, strangely, they both seemed fine. With police present, Almaguer reported, Paul Pelosi, quote, did not immediately declare an emergency or leave his home. Instead, he, quote, walked back several feet toward the assailant and away from police. What? Paul Pelosi walked away from the police and toward David DePape? What could possibly explain behavior like that? And what were the two doing for the 30 minutes before police arrived? Under normal circumstances, we wouldn't want to know. Paul Pelosi's personal life is his business. It's not our business. We've got nothing against the guy. We believe in privacy. But unfortunately for Paul Pelosi, there's an election coming next week, and his wife's allies immediately politicized the assault against him. They tried to tell us that David DePape, a homeless, illegal alien nudist drug addict who had a BLM flag hanging near the broken school bus that he lives in, was actually a right-wing hitman inspired by Q, determined to act out the violence of January 6th in Nancy Pelosi's own home. They told us that, like we'd believe it. Then the President of the United States went on television and said it again. It's laughably absurd. Russia bombed its own pipeline, okay. But they said it, and they're still saying it. Then, out of nowhere, comes the Today Show, the head baton twirler in the Democratic Party's media pep squad, and completely, probably unintentionally, blows up their lie. After watching Almaguer's story in the Today Show this morning, you could only conclude, as Elon Musk put it, there's a tiny possibility there might be more to this story than meets the eye. You think? And now we know for a fact that there is more to the story because NBC News has Jeffrey Epsteined the entire thing. NBC deleted Almaguer's story both from its website and from Twitter. Why'd they do that? Well, obviously, they did it because the report was true. There's no question. When was the last time you saw someone punished for lying? No one's ever punished for lying. You can lie all you want. What you can't do is tell the truth about something important. That's dangerous. You will be punished if you do that. And many are punished, in case you haven't noticed. So just for fun, we called over to NBC News today. We want to get their explanation for why they censored their own story. But mostly, for being honest, we just wanted to rub their noses in the fact that they're not journalists at all. They're obedient little throne-sniffing servants to the party in power. Predictably, NBC News refused to tell us what was wrong with their own story, but of course we already knew what was wrong with it. Nancy Pelosi didn't like it. That was the problem. Nancy Pelosi did appreciate the story that NBC News ran entitled, "The GOP has Paul Pelosi's blood on its hands." That story remains on the NBC website tonight. It meets their, quote, standards. So what are we watching here? Well, lying, obviously, but not the usual kind of lying. Normal people lie in a very recognizable way. They're human beings. They have consciences. They feel guilty about lying. So they don't go all the way. They shade the truth. Did you eat these cookies, you'll ask your 5-year-old? I had one, he'll say, looking at you nervously. He's lying, but he's doing it to the minimum extent he feels he has to. But if you ask a sociopath the same question, you'll get a very different answer. Did you eat these cookies, you'll ask? No, he'll reply, looking you straight in the face and smiling faintly. You ate them. That's not shading the truth. That's inverting the truth. It's scary, and you're seeing a lot of it lately. John Fetterman won The View today, for example. The one thing everyone knows about John Fetterman is that in May, he suffered serious brain damage from a stroke. He can now barely speak. That's true. It's obvious. There's no debate about it. Now, if you live in Pennsylvania, you may vote for John Fetterman on Tuesday anyway, depending upon how attached you are to late-term abortion. But no matter how you vote, with or against, you can't argue that John Fetterman, quote, looks and sounds great, because by any measure, he does not at all. But that's exactly what ABC hosts argued today. Watch this.
I think you look and sound great. So last week, let me ask you this. You and Dr. Oz faced off in your first televised debate, and you said, quote, it wasn't exactly easy. I think it was an incredibly courageous and brave thing for you to show what healing from a stroke looks like. That's incredibly brave. On the other hand, Dr. Oz, a cardiac surgeon, in my view, came off as a bully. Does any of this surprise you, a man with a Harvard master's degree? Do you think the people of Pennsylvania saw what they needed to see from you to gain their vote?
Yeah, I really believe that it certainly wasn't an even event for me, without a doubt.
John Fetterman, you look and sound great. Really, ABC lady? Have you had a stroke too? How stupid do you think your audience is? Pretty stupid, apparently. This same liar described Fetterman's Senate debate performance, the one you saw, as, quote, incredibly courageous and brave, like he was on the bin Laden raid instead of drooling on a stage in Harrisburg. In case you've forgotten what she was referring to, here's what it looked like.
You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Hi, good night, everybody. That's not incredibly courageous. It's incredibly cruel. John Fetterman's wife ought to be shunned by decent people for allowing that to happen. She knew her husband's condition. She just wants the power. It's disgusting. And keep in mind, that's how John Fetterman talks with the help of a computer. We got a glimpse of his talking machine today. It's the size of an iron lung.
Fetterman, who's recovering from a stroke in May, used a closed captioning device during the interview, with the stenographer typing out the questions in real time.
Again, just like the question of what Paul Pelosi was doing at 2 in the morning with an illegal alien nudist, we would be just as happy, in fact, very happy, to ignore this whole thing. We don't want to talk about John Fetterman's stroke. It's awful. It's depressing. John Fetterman should have dropped out of the race in May with the encouragement of his loving wife, which apparently doesn't have. But instead, they're pushing him, the Democratic Party is pushing him to run for the Senate despite his inability to speak. And they're doing that because they want power. And for the rest of us, that means we are now required to pretend that this sad brain damaged guy is actually incredibly brave and impressive. In other words, they're demanding that we ignore what we can see with our eyes. That's called the big lie. And 4 days before the midterm elections, it's everywhere. Here's Joy Reid of MSNBC telling you that inflation is not real. Now, you may imagine that you're paying more for spaghetti and 2x4s and heating oil. Oh, no. That's just a figment of your imagination. In fact, it's a diabolical psyop engineered by the Information Warfare Division of the Republican Party in Washington. Watch this.
The only people I ever hear use the word inflation are journalists and economists, right? So that is not part of the normal lexicon of the way people talk. So it's interesting that Republicans are doing something they don't normally do, right? Which is not use the common tongue, right? Not use just common English to sort of do on their campaigns like they're doing with crime. But what they've done is they've taught people the word inflation, right? Yeah. Most people who would have never used that word ever in their lives are using it now because they've been taught it, including on TV, including in newspapers. They've been taught this word.
Someday we're going to do a recurring segment called Guess Joy Reid's IQ. That'll be fun. What they've done, says the Harvard lady, what they've done is they've taught people the word inflation. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Republican Party running around teaching people words, even 3-syllable words. Inflation. Inflation. Scary. Next, some of these MAGA people will be reading and writing their own names on legal documents and God knows what else. Stop them before they bring literacy to the population. Before you know it, people will start to believe that crime is real. And for the record, it's not.
But there's a major concern surrounding the racist rhetoric that often goes hand in glove with the law and order messages.
Republicans are pulling out all the old fear and loathing playbook, trying to scare voters about crime.
They're not concerned about voter safety. They just want to keep voters scared.
They have now turned to a strategy that sensationalizes crime, that weaponizes crime, and that racializes crime.
The other guys play the crime card relentlessly and shamelessly. It's got racial elements to it. Let's just call that for what it is.
The type of crime that scares Republican and independent voters the most, to make them believe that crime is skyrocketing, that America is a hellhole. And the thing is, it works. Dystopian, nakedly racist video, preferably grainy security cam footage featuring almost exclusively black people committing crime in big cities.
See, that's the thing. You know what they're doing? Do you know what they're doing? These racists, they're weaponizing crime. It's not the guy with the weapon who's the problem. The one stealing your purse or raping you or breaking into your house or carjacking you with the kids in the back. No. That's not the weapon that we need to worry about. The weapon is you're noticing that it's happening. And in case you don't believe that, we have statistics. And they appeared the other day on CNN. CNN ran a report on FBI crime stats showing that crime is down. See? Crime is down. These are numbers. Kind of forgot to mention that the FBI report they cited left out 40% of major cities in the United States, including the two biggest, New York and Los Angeles. Just kind of forgot that. Oh, except for the population centers. But, you know, in Bangor and Great Falls, totally fine. It's totally fine. So, again, this is not a small lie. Not a small lie, it's a big lie. The big lie. I think that's a phrase they use. Of course they do. They're also denying there's anything wrong with our southern border. There's nothing wrong with our southern border. There's no invasion. 5 million people, 5 million friends come over for dinner. Not a big deal. And by the way, if you've got video of it, it's probably fake. Actually, we do. Here it is.
Clearly, this is major news. This is a former president of the United States getting subpoenaed. While this huge news event was breaking, what was Fox News airing? Crime, crime, crime. Crime, inflation, immigration. That's all they do all day, every day, just going right to the fears of the American people.
We saw J.D. Vance harping on the issue of crime and linking it to things like illegal immigration. Those are the types of issues, the things that drive fear.
They're just coming straight out, and especially during election time, we see it's the caravans again, it's the fear of immigrants.
They were scaring suburban white women with caravans coming to their neighborhood.
You turn on Fox News any time of day, any day of the week, there are 3 messages on repeat: the border crisis, crime on the rise, and inflation.
Why aren't they talking about climate change? Haven't they seen the Greta videos? Climate change is what matters. Instead, they're talking about their country, their stupid country. It's because 5 million people show up. You're a racist if you notice. Again, nothing you just heard refutes in any way the facts that Fox News puts on a loop. What it addresses is you. And the person it attacks is you because you dared to notice. Shut up! You're not allowed to notice, and don't you dare vote against it. So of the many lies they're pushing, maybe the most bewildering of all is the idea that you can destroy democracy by voting. Really? We're under the impression you destroyed democracy with, like, artillery, or by changing the population of your country, by opening the borders, thereby watering down the voting power of the population, its citizens. That might be destroying democracy. But no. Now we've learned that the real attack on democracy is electoral disobedience. Watch this.
Make no mistake, democracy is on the ballot for all of us.
Democracy is on the ballot.
Democracy is on the ballot. Think about this.
Democracy is on the ballot.
Democracy is actually on the ballot.
Democracy is on the ballot.
Democracy is on the ballot.
And democracy is on the ballot.
Do you believe that democracy is on the ballot in Utah?
It is on the ballot.
Democracy is on the ballot this year in America.
Somebody's got to tell voters what they need to hear, which is that democracy is on the ballot.
All right. I mean, this is ultimately a news show. We have our opinions, but it's also incumbent on us to check the facts. So we have a sample ballot here, and we're checking, and it turns out Democracy is not on the ballot. There are actually names of candidates who are on the ballot, and you get to choose one as a voter, the one who best represents you, and you get to choose any candidate you want because it's a democracy, meaning you run the government because it's your country. So no, democracy is not on the ballot. And of course they knew that. What they're really telling you is that the threat to democracy is voters. Don't you dare destroy this beautiful representative government by asking it to represent you. How dare you? Democracy means supporting Joe Biden, and anything less than that is insurrection. That's the script they're reading. And the amazing thing is some of the more feeble-minded among them actually seem to believe it. So Michael Beschloss, for example. Beschloss is living proof that you don't have to pass an IQ test to become a historian. You just have to call yourself one. I'm a historian, Michael Beschloss. So they hauled in Beschloss the other day from semi-retirement to ruminate about democracy. And they expected him to say, democracy's on the ballot. And he may have said that, but as he got going, he lost control of himself. Watch this.
And a historian 50 years from now, if historians are allowed to write in this country, and if there are still free publishing houses and a free press, which I'm not certain of, but if that is true, a historian will say what was at stake tonight and this week was the fact whether we will be a democracy in the future, whether our children will be arrested and conceivably killed. We're on the edge of a brutal authoritarian system, and it could be a week away.
A week away? What? We don't know where Michael Beschloss is broadcasting from. It didn't look like a bunker. It looked like a French country kitchen that his decorator put together, but whatever. Hope he's stockpiling low-carb pasta because it could be a dark tomorrow. Now, keep in mind, this is the guy who is advising Joe Biden on extremism, but needless to say, he does not regard himself as an extremist. Quote, if you vote Republican, your children will be arrested and killed. That's his campaign slogan. It's not quite as reassuring as, say, a chicken in every pot or even hope and change. But at this point, Democrats are out of hope. And above all, they fear change. They want things to stay exactly the way they are. Unfortunately for them, Blake Masters may soon bring change to Washington. We hope he does. He's running for Senate from the state of Arizona. We're honored to have him join us now. Blake Masters, thanks so much for coming on. You're pretty straightforward. I would say people can agree with you or disagree with you, but you tend to say exactly what you think. Maybe that's why they're so horrified. But how do you assess an entire political party that says the opposite of what's true and does it with maximum aggression? What's that like facing off against that?
It's frustrating, but all we have to do is tell the truth. I understand why the Democrats have to lie. They have to lie because they don't want to talk about their record, right? Look at what they've done to this country in the last 20 months. They've opened the borders. They've welcomed 4.5 million illegal aliens, right? Joe Biden and Mark Kelly, their open borders policies. It's killing young people in America, over 100,000 dead from fentanyl in just the last year alone. 13% inflation here in Phoenix, Arizona. I understand why the Democrats want to run from that record of failure and lie. But they just lie to us, Tucker. They lie. They say, Fetterman, Biden, they're totally fit for office. They're obviously not. They're obviously not, right? And it does make me upset with their wives for putting them in this position, right?
I agree with
you
that.
Almost wonder if the Democrats run people like this. Kamala Harris, she can't get a coherent sentence out either. And then we spend all our time talking about how inarticulate they are. Meanwhile, their horrible, destructive left-wing policies steamroll the American middle class. I think voters are about to give the left a good and hard dose of democracy next Tuesday, because it turns out people don't like the direction that Biden and Mark Kelly have been dragging us towards.
Now, I noticed you used the term inflation, which you probably picked up at some fancy school. MSNBC has scolded Republicans for teaching that word to Republican voters. Have you taught that word to voters in Arizona?
Every time I talk to a voter, they bring up inflation first, before I can. Yeah, people know. Exactly. The people of Arizona, the people of America, they're a whole hell of a lot smarter than, A, the Democrats in charge, and B, than the Democrats give them credit for, right?
Yeah.
People are commonsensical in this country. They know that Biden and Mark Kelly surrendering our energy independence, making energy expensive, well, that makes everything expensive. That causes high prices, that causes inflation. They know that the Democrats' undisciplined spending, it's out of control. They've printed and spent $6 trillion in the last 20 months. Mark Kelly doesn't understand how that causes inflation, but my 8-year-old understands it perfectly well. When the government just prints trillions of dollars, yeah, it's going to make prices go up. It's going to make inflation. Right, so Joy Reid, I think she thinks we're stupid, but she needs to look in the mirror because she just doesn't understand what's happening. Voters understand it perfectly well. That's why a red wave is incoming in just 4 days.
That's why you're winning, because they call you an extremist and then listen to you for 2 minutes. You agree or disagree, you're certainly not an extremist, that's for sure. Blake Masters, appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you.
And we know Masters is not extremist because our producer's embedded with his campaign for months, and the result is a brand new documentary out on Fox Nation. It's called The Candidate. Blake Masters, you can stream it right now. So at the top of the show, we told you about the pretty amazing report that aired on the Today Show this morning about what happened inside Paul Pelosi's home. But then that story got Epsteined. The guards fell asleep, the story killed itself and disappeared. It's been scrubbed from the internet. But we kept a copy so you could see it. Here it is.
Sources familiar with what unfolded in the Pelosi residence now revealing when officers responded to the high-priority call, they were seemingly unaware they'd been called to the home of the Speaker of the House. After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi. The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home, but instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police. Why Pelosi didn't try to flee or tell responding officers he was in distress is unclear.
We still don't know exactly what unfolded between Mr. Pelosi and the suspect for the 30 minutes they were alone inside that house before police arrived.
Wait, they were alone in the house for 30 minutes before police arrived, and Pelosi didn't seem upset when the police finally got there? What is that? Well, we don't know. We do know that almost immediately after that report aired, NBC News deleted it from their website and also from Twitter. On the NBC website, an editor's note reads this way, quote, "The piece should not have aired because it did not meet NBC News reporting standards," end quote. Well, NBC News has no reporting standards. This is the company that leaked the Access Hollywood tape to the Washington Post to destroy Donald Trump before he became president. It's a political organization, obviously. It has no standards. But it's to torture them. We called over to NBC News and asked, well, why exactly did you do this? And they refused to tell us. But we can recap what we know. And again, we don't want to be talking about this in the first place, but the President of the United States is claiming that Paul Pelosi was attacked by some kind of right-wing Trump voter or whatever. So here's what we know. Last Friday night, Paul Pelosi called 911 to report that his, quote, friend was in the house. That friend was David DePape. David DePape is an illegal alien, drug addict, hippie nudist living in a school bus with a BLM sign out front. Kind of a classic right-winger, right? So initial reports told us that DePape was, when the police arrived, in his underwear. Then local news retracted that claim for reasons no one ever explained. Then, according to NBC, when police arrived, Pelosi didn't try to run. In fact, he walked back toward David DePape. What the hell? We hate even to speculate about any of this, but they're forcing the issue because they're telling us that this was a replay of January 6th. So we have a right to know what exactly it really was. Jason Whitlock is with Outkick.com. He joins us tonight. Jason, thanks so much for coming on. They're clearly lying. Like, what is this?
I got to set the record straight. I'm with The Blaze. I got a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jason Whitlock, not Outkick. But Tucker, listen.
Yeah.
I'm not upset with NBC. I have no expectations for them as a journalist. What I really have to stand up and defend, I'm outraged for Nancy Pelosi. This woman has taken the hard-earned money she's made from insider trading and invested in a pair of cans at 82 years old and comes home to find out that her husband's playing hide the hammer with a Black Lives Matter guy? You talk about disrupting the nuclear family. The Black Lives Matter crew must be ecstatic because this guy's doing it and so is Paul Pelosi. I'm upset for Nancy. She spent her hard-earned money on a pair of cans, and he's not interested.
Well, of course we can't confirm or deny your suggestion, but I must say I did notice that the second people started speculating about what might have really happened, which we are not doing and haven't done, but some have, because in the absence of the body cam video, why wouldn't they? I saw these liberals on Twitter saying it's disgusting that you would suggest there was anything alternative going on. I thought they were defenders of the alternative. When did that become immoral in the eyes of the Democratic Party?
Tucker, I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but I got to correct you again. Are you suggesting that my information that she spent her money on a pair of cans, are you saying that's bad information? I've seen a lot of evidence. I feel real comfortable. She's trying to entice her husband, but he's interested in playing hide the hammer on a Friday night with some weirdo. I think there's an issue. This is what needs to be investigated. This is the whole end game for Black Lives Matter. Disrupting the nuclear family. Start with the Speaker of the House.
Jason Whitlock of The Blaze, thank you so much. Great to see you tonight. Well, so we showed you at the beginning of the show a bunch of people telling you that there's no border crisis whatsoever. The southern border's unopened. It's totally fine. Bill Melugin has spent more than a year proving otherwise through old-fashioned reporting, and he has found tonight that it's actually getting worse, not better. He joins us from the border next. Voters are upset about immigration and high gas prices, and the Biden administration sold off a lot of our strategic petroleum reserves, in part to China, to lower gas prices. But they didn't do anything about our open border. In fact, it's gotten worse as the election has gotten closer, which is kind of amazing and tells you something. So last time we showed you thermal drone footage showing crowds of people from a bunch of different countries crossing illegally into our country to stay here forever. Since last night, it's gotten even worse. Fox's Bill Melugin has been down there on and off for more than a year. He joins us from the border tonight. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Tucker. Well, the Biden administration continues to insist that the border here is closed and secure, but that simply does not match up with the reality on the ground here. Case in point, take a look at this brand new video we shot early this morning. Stunning images from our thermal-capable drone showing yet again another enormous group of several hundred illegal immigrants crossing into the Normandy, Texas area. This is the fourth day in a row we've seen this play out in the early morning hours before the sun is up in this exact same location. You'll see them in a single file line waiting across the Rio Grande. You'll notice there's no resistance whatsoever on either side of the border. It's all very nonchalant, and that's because these migrants know under the Biden administration, if they can just step foot on U.S. soil, they're good to go. They believe if they can just get to the United States, they're going to be processed and released into the United States with a future court date rather than expelled or removed from the country. And in this Del Rio sector, that's exactly what happens the majority of the time here. The images are stunning. Some of the lines of people seemingly as far as the eye can see at certain points. We had a chance to talk to several of the migrants as they were coming in, some of them telling us, La frontera está abierta. That translates to the border is open. We had a couple guys tell us, Joe Biden es el mejor. That translates to Joe Biden is the best. They feel under this administration, now's the time to come, and they continue to come in historic numbers. That wasn't the only group we had today, though. Take a look at this second piece of video. Just a couple hours later, on the other side of town, right here in Eagle Pass, another group of several hundred migrants crossing illegally here into a private pecan orchard. This happens multiple times a day, every day. And Tucker, back out here live, Border Patrol morale is sinking like a rock, the lowest it's ever been. We talk to these agents every day. They feel like they've been turned into social workers. One agent recently telling me he feels under this administration, Border Patrol's priority has shifted from border enforcement to border enrollment. We'll send it back to you.
Greatest crime ever committed against this country in our history. Bill Melugin, thank you so much. Bill plays a starring role in a brand new documentary for Tucker Carlson Originals called Battle for the Border. It's out on Fox Nation, and it shows how Mexican drug cartels are running this whole thing. And there's a reason more than 100,000 Americans just died of fentanyl overdoses last year because of our open borders. Here's a clip. That documentary is called Battle for the Border. You can stream it right now on Fox Nation. You get a free membership at tuckercarlson.com. A lot of people going to jail. Trump was a fascist, remember? Not a lot of people went to jail for political reasons under Trump. A lot of people are going to jail for political reasons now, including two conservatives whose crime was asking questions about the last election. We're getting an update on their condition, still in jail tonight, after the break. Director, anyone in Brazil who questions the outcome of their recent election is being punished, censored, or thrown in jail. You'd hate to think that could happen here. It's already happening. Two leaders of the group True the Vote, including the president, Catherine Engelbrecht, who we know personally is a very nice and sane person, both were jailed this week by a judge in Texas. What'd they do wrong? Well, they alleged voter fraud in the last election based on what they say are confidential sources. In response, a software company sued True the Vote. But because the leaders of True the Vote will not reveal their confidential sources, which they're entitled to keep secret because they're confidential sources and what they're doing is journalism, because they're sticking with that, They're in jail tonight for contempt of court. Brian Glicklich is the CEO of the consulting firm Digital Strategy, who's been watching this very closely. He joins us to assess. Brian, thanks so much for coming on. So Catherine Engelbrecht, we've had on this show, is not a wacko at all. She's a very, I would say, sober, sincere, smart person. How could she be in jail for exercising her First Amendment right?
Catherine and her research partner, Greg, are in jail tonight for refusing to disclose to Konik, a voting technology company, the names of the researchers who provided information to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office that resulted in a criminal indictment of Konik's CEO, Eugene Yu. The most progressive DA in the country, George Gascon, actually indicted Yu for exfiltrating the records of millions of American poll workers, including their social security numbers, their home addresses, out of the country to servers in China. These researchers developed that information. Catherine attempted to give it to law enforcement at the FBI and elsewhere, and was sued by Konik for doing that. When Konik sued them, they got a restraining order ordering Catherine to turn over the names of these researchers. Catherine and Greg, who are very courageous people, simply refused to do it, and as a result, while Yu is at home on bail, Catherine and Greg are in jail tonight.
Well, I mean, you described that so clearly. Bless you for that. Where are all the civil libertarian liberals who used to defend human rights? Has anyone said anything about this? This is so shocking that it could happen.
The civil libertarians and the mainstream press is basically a flock of sheep that are each bleeding the exact same tune, and all they want to do is deny any conversation about the possibility of fraud in elections. That any conversation about that is met with nothing more than threats to liberty.
Yeah, I mean, they spent 3 years telling us that the 2016 election was rigged, and they short-circuited the entire U.S. government because of Russia. That was a lie, and no one was ever punished. Now, if you pipe up and say, I'm worried about the 2020 election, you go to jail. It's beyond. Brian, I appreciate your coming on tonight, and I hope you'll come back and tell us what happens in this shocking violation of human rights. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tucker.
So it seems pretty clear Democrats are going to lose big on Tuesday, and they know it, and they're panicking as a result of that, and they've gone basically completely nuts. Here's Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina.
This is what happens in a country that follows what happened in Germany in the early 30s. This country is on track to repeat what happened in Germany when it was the greatest democracy going, elected a chancellor who then co-opted the media, that this past president calling the press the enemy of the people. That is a bunch of crap, and we know it. And that's what's going on in this country.
So Weimar Germany was the greatest government ever? Really? Weimar Germany was great, and Republicans are Nazis. It's hard even to know where to start. So we've asked Victor Davis Hanson from the Hoover Institution to join us tonight. Professor, thanks so much for coming on. What do you make of all this?
Thank you. It's just nonsense. And the only way we can look at it, Tucker, is that we haven't had in 90 years the left seize the control of government, and they have the Congress and the executive branch. And it's not that we, it's not that we have a border that's open. They blew up the border. It's not they're letting criminals out. They blew up the criminal justice system. It's not that they shut down ANWR. They blew up the whole idea of self-sufficiency in energy. And when you ask them about it, they won't defend it. They won't say, well, we got 3 million illegal aliens, isn't that great? No, they don't talk about it. And they won't change. They won't say, well, let's build 100 miles of the wall, or let's reopen Keystone. So all they do instead is they have a mantra, it's a trifecta. They said, if you're going not to vote for Democrats, if you don't vote for a Democrat, you destroy democracy. And every woman in the United States has a constitutional right to have an abortion to the last minute before birth. And Donald Trump and his supporters, half the country, are fascists. And the only good thing out of this toxic 2 years that we've endured, we lab rats from these mad scientists, is that in a weird way they brought people together, Tucker. There's a new ecumenical movement of African American males, Hispanics, and the white working class that detest these bi-coastal elites. Yeah. And they're starting to look at class concerns rather than these racial differences. And just the antipathy toward these left-wing elites has created a consensus that I haven't seen in my lifetime, but I think we're going to be shocked next Tuesday when it roars. It's going to be a mouse and it's going to roar, and they're not ready for it, and that's why they're panicking. They don't know what to do.
I think I've been a coastal elite my whole life, and I could not have more contempt for them, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So you think, just to bottom line it for us, since you're a historian, you think this will be a realignment next Tuesday?
I do, and I think we paid a hell of a price to put up for 2 years with this insanity, but there will be some good out of it because people saw in the raw nihilism and socialism, and what they saw was ugly and they don't want any part of it, and it's going to bring people together that no one ever would imagine have common class interest. And it's going to be a revolt against these, as I said, these bi-coastal snarky elites. Nobody likes them, and then we're going to find out on Tuesday just how much they don't like them.
Oh man, you're making me happy just saying that. The great Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much. Great to see you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Joe Biden, in the habit of issuing declarations, just issued one on energy. He promised to shut down coal plants across America. Okay, because we've got too much energy. That's next.